Godfather. Pulled up to the scene in a 65 Bentley, dripped in Brioni, China doll with me, looking like a supermodel. Oh, what a feeling. 25 years old, 25 million. Today's the audition for the Godfather part. My life's already a movie, so when do I start? I walk up in Patsy's, East 119th Street. Fat Tony Salerno gets a kiss on the cheek. I know my way around, not my first time here. Been doing overnight Ziganet loans for 10 years. I say hello to Danny Pagano and Tough Tony. Nicky Domino gives me a nod, they all know me. They ask why I'm there so early, I say the part. They say what part? I say the movie, why not? I don't look like Carlo, they all begin laughing. 3 p.m. ready for the lights.
My name is Gianni Russo, a.k.a. Carlo, the infamous son-in-law from The Godfather. I'm now known as the Hollywood Godfather, and this is my story.
Walking with a limp like will I ever run? Once again, or is this it? Am I forever done? Living in the hospital was never fun. Some people were cool, but not everyone.
Good afternoon, everybody, or good night, wherever you are. This is Pat from the Hollywood Godfather podcast. Gianni is unavoidably detained, and we do have a guest, so we decided to kick off the show without him. He may be joining us mid-show, and if that happens, of course, you will know about it. So we have a special guest. Now we have 2 special guests today. Adrian Martinez of the Invest in Yourself podcast. We've had him on the show before. A veritable font of knowledge. He knows the subject. And today he's bringing with him a friend of his, and they're going into business together, but we'll get into that a little later. Salvatore Polisi, who I had the pleasure of reading his book, The Sinatra Club, about 3 years ago. This is a coincidence. And I tell you, I really enjoy it. And coming from a writer's perspective, I mean, I've published 12 books. I'm very picky when it comes to books. I'm always looking for mistakes. And it really is, you can't enjoy reading anymore once you start to write. You're always looking for something that sometimes isn't there, but most of the time is. But I was impressed with Sal for his honesty, his humor, and the way he wrote the story. It was great. So without any further delay, Adrian, why don't you introduce Sal?
Okay. Well, Sal is he was a Colombo associate from he way back in the day before all these other mob guys are talking and speaking, because Sal actually was really close with John Gotti before he became the boss of the Gambino family. So Sal was he also had a social club that he opened called the Sinatra Club, and he would also go on to write a movie and book about it. But so Sal was around a lot of guys that were made men. They before they became made men or capos or bosses of families. I mean, he was around a lot of these guys before. I mean, he met a lot of cool people in prison. I mean, he'll be able to tell you more of it about it than me just telling you. So, Sal, if you want to go ahead and just give a little background for people.
Hello there, Patrick. How are you?
Sal, it's a pleasure to meet the guy who wrote the book.
Yeah. Well, listen, you're an author. I was enthusiastic about talking with Johnny because, they shot that movie in 1971. We knew the movie. When I say we, the guys in the street, we knew the movie was happening. And we also knew that a lot of the mob guys, they didn't want to recognize that movie even before it came out. But my position was that I was in and around with the Colombo guys, and I accidentally fell in with Gotti and their Gambinos when I became a crime partner with one of their young guys, a guy named Foxy Girodi. And then having the Sinatra Club, I had Jimmy Burke, everybody knows who he was, come in and play cards there. And along came Tommy DeSimone. Well, it didn't take long, a few months, and the 3 of us became partners after they had sit downs and permission was given to work with different guys from different families. Because as you know, there was an ongoing war in the early 70s, naturally with the Colombos, they were always at war. And then, also the Bonanno group. So my experience was pre-Godfather movie. Once the movie came out, well, that sort of added to the mystique of who we were.
Yeah, okay. I have a question here. But changing families, affiliations, going into business with other people. It happens, but it's sort of rare. How did you wind up with Jimmy Burke and DeSimone? Oh, let me start from the beginning. How did you come up with the Sinatra Club? And
Okay,
where was it?
Yeah, I'll tell you. In the summer, I should say in October of '71, after I had spent the summer robbing banks, and in the Sinatra Club, you remember the two geriatric bank robbers? They were old enough to be my father, and I knew I couldn't continue to rob banks with them. So right around October, I got shot in the back by a New York City cop. I was driving a Corvette, and I tried to run him over.
Yeah.
Well, I had my arm in the sling, and Dominic Cataldo, who was a hitman for the Columbos, said, "Hey, let's go stop at this little club." I go, "Who's in this little club?" He said, "Oh, it's Charlie and Charlie Fatico and Danny Fatico, and they got all the young guys, all the Gotti guys are there." So we stop, we walk into this little shithole.
This was if I'm thinking correctly, this was off Atlantic Avenue somewhere, right?
It was on 101st Avenue, the Bergen Hunt and Fish Club.
Oh, that. I thought you were talking about your own club.
So Gotti was in jail in October. He didn't get out till February. So we stopped. We went in there. Dominic was doing gambling business with Danny, Charlie, or whatever. And when we left, I said, "That's a crappy place. Let's get a little rental, and I'll make a nice little place, and we'll have our own place," because we had a gambling business. And what you did in those days, every Monday night, you settled up all the gambling bets. Well, it was already November, and we had a huge football business. And if you'll remember, Monday Night Football started at 9:00 at night in those days.
Yeah.
And so the guys would pick up the Bulldog Edition Daily News. I don't know if you remember that.
I remember that. Absolutely. Yeah.
Came out at 7:00. They'd come over to this little club. We'd straighten out all the bets. And we started playing nickel and dime poker in November. Well, by the end of the month, we got very excited because it was this major crime. We were rooting for this guy. And it was the guy who jumped out of the airplane, D.B. Cooper, with the money. And he was a hero. He was a hero to us. And more guys came to the club because we had a phone booth there and I had some good food. And before you know it, by January, we had a half a dozen tables. We're rocking and rolling with what they call today Texas poker,
Okay, this was the club I was referring to. This club, the Sinatra Club, was off Atlantic Avenue somewhere, right?
Right, one block off Atlantic Avenue.
Okay, if I recall, because I'm a retired NYPD lieutenant. I worked in the area.
Oh wow!
It was a while ago, but I there were so many social clubs around there, but the name of the club stands out, and I just never forgot it. How did you come up with the name?
Well, there was this fat guy who actually would stay there 20, 30, 40 hours. He would stink because he wouldn't wash. And his mother kept calling him, say, "Come home and take a shower. How could you be in the Sinatra Club all night?" No, she said, "How could you be in that place all night?" She said, "What's the name?" He didn't know what name. He heard the music in the stolen jukebox. It was all Sinatra records because Sinatra had retired. Yeah. And then he said, "Ma, it's the Sinatra Club." And he gave the place the name.
Ah, okay. So, what I mean, besides running the club, which apparently, from what I recall from the book, this is about 4 years ago, but I have a pretty good recollection of it. This club was pretty successful. I mean, you had a good run there.
We did. We had, the thing that happened was we started to get all kinds of guys, and I didn't start hijacking and using Jimmy Burke until the spring of '72. Dominic introduced me to him. So once Dominic introduced me to Jimmy Burke, Dominic had done hijacking, and Jimmy Burke had the best hijacking operation in the city. All you had to do was drop the truck off. He'd pick it up, unload it, you'd get paid the next day. So I got introduced to Jimmy, and lo and behold, he had Crazy Tommy DeSimone working with him. Well, by the time Tommy came to the club and Foxy was there, Gene Gotti, Willie Boy Johnson, I mean, all these Gambino guys were there. And a few guys from the Colombo crew. Then we had Joe Messina stop there. None of these guys were made then, Patrick.
No. How long was this prior to the Lufthansa heist?
Oh, my God. This was happening in '72.
Okay.
In early '72. So by the time Gotti got out. We had to have a sit down. Gotti come out of Lewisburg. He didn't have $50 to play poker. He had no money.
Yeah.
But later he would go on to become the boss and have all the money. But
So, yeah, the Sinatra Club exploded because you could go there and hang out and be safe with other guys from other families. And that's how it was successful.
Yeah, but wasn't that rare?
Yeah.
I mean, to have guys from different crews, everybody's getting along. It's like a fantasy, It
was rare. But once Gotti came there, he kept everybody in line, sort of. He had this image. I mean, he wasn't a boss. He wasn't even a made guy, but everybody was working together because we're hijacking trucks every other week. That's what we were doing.
How was it working for, you hear all kinds of stories about Jimmy Burke. And for those listeners who don't know, Robert De Niro played him in Goodfellas. So the character, you're aware of the character. This guy's got sort of a mystique about him. How was he? What kind of guy was he?
He was a great guy. He was sharp as a tack. And Henry described him, Nick Pileggi described him as, wow, this guy, he'd rather be involved with a crime than be with a woman. I mean, he loved crime. And one time we did a hijacking, Patrick, and I think it was like maybe South American suede coats or something. I don't remember, 10,000, whatever. He came back and he told Cataldo, look, I'll give them 60,000. I said to Dominic, this stuff's got to be worth 200,000. Go back and talk to him. He went back with one conversation and got us 80,000, just like that. Jimmy gave a 20,000 increase. So you could negotiate with Jimmy because he had the stuff sold before the cops even knew he did a hijack, and he could sell something in an hour. It was amazing.
That quick.
The guy was quick. Yeah, he was quick.
Yeah, he must have had a lot of good connections to be able to flip it just like that.
Yeah.
So let's wind up the clock a little here. How did you get involved in this life? What was your childhood like? Was your family involved in the life? Or what happened?
I had an uncle who had a hotel motel on Rockaway Boulevard, right next to Aqueduct Racetrack. And Sonny Franzese would be hanging out there every weekend in 65 and 66. So my uncle had a little gambling business, and he taught me the gambling business when I was 20. By the time I was 22, 23, he went to prison. And then I had moved the gambling business to a little pizza joint, which became Sal's Pizza. And it was like 100 yards from Fat Andy's house. But I wasn't involved with Fat Andy. I was involved with Cataldo and Joe Brancata after the Colombo shooting. But I kept that business going. Dominic went and, spoke to Brancata, and then Fat Andy left me alone back in the 70s. 70s, yeah.
So you were born and raised in Queens?
Born and raised in Brooklyn, Brooklyn, Queens, yeah.
I was going to say too, Patrick, Sal's father was also a bootlegger for the Profaci family, him and his uncle.
Okay, that's what I was getting at. So this is sort of in the blood.
Yes.
Born into it.
Yeah. Yep. They taught you everything. I mean, if you were in New York and you saw Italians and you watched them, they were bred for organized crime because in those days, they sold us a dream. It was an honor. It was a pleasure. People respected you. I mean, in the 60s and 70s, everything was so secretive. Really. It was so secretive. It had the mystique, similar to, Hollywood, baseball. There was nobody airing laundry out. You didn't do that then.
Yeah, I think John Gotti, when he came to power, he was a little bit confused. He forgot that the mafia is a secret organization.
Exactly.
Yeah, Joe Colombo too.
Yeah.
What kind of animosity did he draw? Did somebody try to keep him quiet? I mean, he was a capo at the time when he started with this, publicity, going to clubs and giving interviews.
Listen, in the Sinatra Club book, I was pleasured to go to court with my attorney who wound up going to jail, Mike Corio, who's a mob attorney.
Yeah, I know.
And that particular day in 74, I went with Mike Corio, Angelo, and John Gotti to Roy Cohn's townhouse, where the fix was made about the McBratney shooting. And I was in that meeting. The fix was in. So he went and took a 4-year, sentence. and he became a hero, not only with the mob, but the general public loved Gotti because he sort of avenged, the death of Carlo Gambino's nephew.
Well, to clear that up a little, so people who are listening, some might not know the whole story. This guy, McBratney, allegedly kidnapped Carlo Gambino's nephew.
Right.
And Gotti at the time was a soldier. Or was he even made at the time?
He wasn't even made. Not at all.
He wasn't made at the time. He started to make his bones. He goes into a bar in Staten Island that McBratney frequented. And in front of dozens of witnesses, shoots the guy. Now, it kills him. Now, what I was always amazed at, he only got, 4 years for that?
Yeah, because Cohen had the connection in Staten Island.
You're talking about Roy Cohen?
Joel Cohen.
Oh, Joel Cohen.
Roy Cohen, which was really Trump's attorney, by the way. Roy Cohen. Yeah. Back in those days, the birds of a feather,
So I was going to say, what ultimately, how did he get off with this 4 years? I mean, did he, what did he say was self-defense or what the hell? I mean, no witnesses or no one.
Plenty of witnesses.
But I mean, they didn't want to talk, right?
It was a bar full of people. I don't even think they had to talk.
No.
He just pled out, right? And they just sentenced him 4 years.
Took a plea. And the guy who really did the shooting, he got whacked out. Ralphie, he got killed. So it was just Angelo and John left. So, and that created an image for him. When he went to jail for 2 years.
Okay, Sal, now that's part of the story that's been sort of like folklore. Maybe you could set us straight. What I heard was, and apparently what you just confirmed, Gotti really didn't shoot the guy.
No. This Ralphie Galone did it. They were trying to drag McBratney out. And he was like a big lineman. He was like 250 pounds. And they couldn't get him out of the bar.
So Gotti takes the heat because he wanted to curry favor with Carlo Gambino.
Exactly.
What happened to the shooter, you said?
He got murdered, Ralphie Galone.
How long after McBratney's?
I don't think it was a year or so.
Was it retaliation?
I don't know. It was probably an insurance killing. Maybe it killed him so he wouldn't talk.
Yeah, I mean, that's always another serious outcome because, I mean, that happens quite often. Even if guys don't want to pay off their debts, like Sal had told me, they just whack them out.
Well, that's how Gotti made his name. And I always thought that, maybe perhaps he didn't want the guy who really shot McBratney to start talking before you know it. Gotti looks like a fool. Mm-hmm. So obviously maybe he has something to do with it. But very interesting story. Everybody thinks that it was Gotti who pulled that trigger. But in reality...
he didn't know.
How do you... Sal, at that age, you're a young guy.
Right.
How do you start coming up?
Well, I had to make a reputation for myself. I did a lot of crazy stuff. One time, Gotti brought a hitman down from, I guess, Boston. And he was a big, tall, 6'2" Irish guy. And we were in Gotti's club one night and we were drinking and he abused a friend of mine. Well, yeah, I beat the crap out of this guy. Gene Gotti watched me take him out in the street, almost take his ear off. And they knew I was absolutely crazy. They would say, Obat's nuts. Another time I told Jeannie, hey, let's go heist this, secure terminal in JFK. Let me ask my brother. He went over and told John, he goes, you crazy, Obat's is going to get you killed. The guy's too nuts. He's absolutely bonkers. He's going to go into the airport, inside the security, and heist a building full of watches from Switzerland. He said, don't go with him. Well, we went and did the score. We made a lot of money. And we thought that nobody knew, but guess what? Years later, we found out Willie Boy Johnson gave us up.
After 20 some years. I mean, that's insane. It really is to think about it because this guy, no one suspected him at all.
The things that happen. So amazing.
What's that, Patrick?
Willie Boy got killed. He was killed by Tommy DeSimone, if I recall. No,
right. He got whacked out. Yeah.
Did Tommy go away for that murder?
No, I don't think.
Because he had died after, right?
Yeah, if you check it out, a couple of guys who killed him, they were pretty slick. they stuck nails in the back of their car, threw the nails out on the street after they machine gunned them to death. And that was the end, but the whole great scene in MCC in New York was Gotti convincing Willie Boy that he would never hurt him.
The reason, Sal, I asked you if you came from Queens, were you ever familiar with the guy by the name of Conrad Greaves?
Conrad Greaves.
He owned Conrad's Cloud Room by LaGuardia.
Conrad's nightclub. Yes.
Yeah. What do you know about that? That's I listened to a lot of mob podcasts, and I was on a job for 20 years. Not too many people talk about it. Not too many people are aware.
Yeah.
If you have anything to add to the story, let's hear it.
I didn't know Conrad that well. I know Dominic knew him, but things that happened in that life, Patrick, like you were a police officer, so you knew names. I remember Joe Messina told me, hey, I'm sending the guy over, give him some work. I go, okay, what does he do? He said, great coffee. Guy comes over, he says, I'm Goldie. Okay, Joey sent me. So I give him work because I had 3 or 4 buildings full of dismantling cars. I sold to John Caniglia. I sold to Roy DeMeo. My car business, Chop Shop, was the cover for my drugs. For years, this guy Goldie supplied me with cars. I didn't find out till 15, 20 years ago what his real name was.
Which?
That's what happens in the life.
Yeah.
His nickname. So Conrad, I didn't know Conrad's name. I just didn't know.
No.
Conrad Greaves, I used to hang out at his club. This was a bar in a motel. Right by LaGuardia Airport. It was nothing to look at. And this went from a rat hole to 3 months later, you couldn't get in there with a shoehorn. Right. I mean, packed with women and celebrities, and Conrad loved it. I mean, he's running around buying everybody champagne, buying everybody drinks. Right. And there were 2 brothers, the Jacobson brothers. I don't know if you're familiar with them, Sal. Did you know them?
The guys in the horse business?
They were involved in shaking down bars in Queens. That's all I knew from them. I was a young guy at the time. I had just come on a job. I was on a job about 4 or 5 years. They tried to shake down Conrad, and they didn't care who heard him. They didn't care anything. They just went in and said, we want this amount of money. They wanted a lot of money. They saw what this guy was making. Yeah. Conrad now thinks that he's everybody's friend. Everybody is his friend, and he could do whatever he wants to do. And I was there the night Conrad cursed these 2 guys out. And I said, what did I know? I was like 23 years old. I was brand new minted cop. But even I knew, the place was packed. And I said, this is a mistake. Something's going to happen to this guy. About 2 weeks later, I wasn't there at the time. In front of a lot of people, they lit him up. And I mean, lit him up. They set him on fire.
Wow.
Jeez. Runs out the door to try, if you're on fire, and I hope that never happens, but if you're on fire, what you do is don't run. You fan the flames. Anyway, he goes outside, he collapsed. They went out, they pumped, I don't know how many bullets into the guy.
Wow.
And I don't recall what happened to the Jacobsons. Everybody knew who did it. I mean, everybody saw it. I don't know if they had witnesses or what. I was just wondering if you knew anything about the story.
But what years was this, Patrick? In the 70s?
This had to be 75, something around there. It's
Patrick, I mean, so you when you're doing these interviews and stuff, like you're able to continue your investigations and stuff from back in there. I'm sure with all these mafia guys talking and stuff. Well, now it's like
we hung out. Sal probably tell you the same thing. The town was wide open. The cops hung out in places that the wise guys hung out. The politicians were there. There's a place on 2nd Avenue and 59th Street called the Alibaba.
Yeah, I remember that.
Familiar with it? I don't know who owned it. Gianni knows. Yeah, but we used to go in and out of there because I was in a unit that worked in the area. And we were in there, 2-3 nights a week, packed with wise guys, a lot of women. They killed a guy in there in front of, I don't know who they were, but I wasn't there. But this guy's nickname was Rabbit. And he was about to leave the club, and 2 guys come in, and he sees them, and he runs, and he tries to hide under the piano. And in front of I don't know how many witnesses, they just riddled this guy with bullets.
And of course, nobody saw anything.
Nobody saw it then.
No.
They did hear noises they thought were backfires, right? But
Oh my God.
nobody knew anything. And then there was a bar by the Queens Midtown Tunnel on the Manhattan side called the Beef East. Alley Boy hung out there with his crew, and the cops were there, and everybody intermingled. Back in the 70s, when these two diverse groups, opposed groups, cops and gangsters, got together, everybody was very respectful. There was never any problems. You're buying each other drinks, and then when you leave, the war starts again. Then
right.
And I told this story quite a few times on this podcast. But you weren't around then, Sal. But I left my off-duty gun in the bathroom.
Wow.
Yeah, that's what I said. Wow. I didn't know I had left it in the bathroom until I got home in Jackson Heights.
Wow.
So that's why I liked hanging out there, because you jump in the Midtown Tunnel and you're home in like a half hour. I realized that when I was taking off my jacket, and I can't describe the feeling of looking at an empty holster. How do you explain that? Plus, it's like a 5-day rip or a 30-day rip in the NYPD. You lose a lot, go up on charges. But I knew where I left it. I went to the bed. I took the gun out, put it on top of the toilet tank, and I knew where it was. I said, this thing's got to be gone. I jumped in my car. I made it back to the east side in 15 minutes. I was doing literally 80, 90 miles an hour through the Midtown Tunnel. I walk into the club, and Alley Boy Persico was standing there with my stub-nose revolver, twirling it on the trigger guard.
Really?
Somebody called me when I got home. One of the girls there knew my phone number and said, I think you forgot something here. And that's because I was bombed. And it's when I looked at my holster, I said, holy shit, it's gone. Anyway, he's twirling the thing around his finger, and he says, I think you forgot something. And he hands it to me. Now, he didn't have to do that.
Damn, dude.
I mean,
That's insane.
Serious shit,
Yeah.
And what do? You said, thank you. You shook his hand, and he said, don't worry about it. There was respect there is the purpose of the story. Nobody wanted to hurt cops. The cops didn't want to hurt the wise guys. Unless we were working, it's a different story, and vice versa too.
Right.
Two opposed groups.
Yeah.
But everybody talks about the old days, but the old days, as far as OC guys and cops, it was totally different.
Yeah. Yeah.
Sal actually did know. Didn't you have encounters with Ali Persico?
No, with his brother.
With Carmine Persico?
Alley Boy, not Carmine. Yeah, with Alley Boy.
You had, okay. Yeah, so you want to speak on that?
Oh, I was in Lewisburg with him. I was there when the Mafia Row, took hold over there. But through Cataldo, in those days, in the 70s, they kept you away from other made guys. Their philosophy was divide and conquer. So once Colombo got shot, then I was invited to Brancato's house. But I wanted to mention to Patrick, years later, I think it was like 1989 or 90, I was invited to speak at an FBI graduation. And when I got there, Robert Lucy was speaking there.
I knew Bob.
There you go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For those of you listeners who don't know who he is, he was a detective in a special investigation unit, SIU.
Right.
They made a movie out of it with Treat Williams called Prince of the City.
Prince of the City, yeah.
I remember all this stuff. I don't know where I parked my car.
Yeah.
But this stuff I remember. And Lucy, if he would have come right out and said, they got me with my hand in the till.
Yeah.
I was a thief. They got me and I flipped. He would have gotten a lot more respect than the bullshit story he was passing down through the years. That he wanted to be a white knight. He wanted to say, what he said was, I discovered the error of my ways.
Yeah.
But of course, it wasn't the story. But you're talking about speaking in front of groups. He actually, Lucy would have an ongoing class in the police academy teaching about corruption.
Right.
You got to scratch your head and say, what? Yeah. Bob passed away about 7 years ago, but he was.
It was a different time. I go to Hollywood, and who do I meet? I go to dinner 2 or 3 times with Sonny Grasso. I mean, these guys, they left New York and they wound up in Hollywood.
And Sonny did very well.
Yeah, nice guy, good guy.
Yeah, very, very good.
Yeah.
So how did you keep on mentioning, jails, Lewisburg and all that? what kind of time did you do it? How did you do it? I mean, why did you do it?
Here's the deal. With all the bank robberies I did, I got caught for one. And
excuse me a second. These were armed robberies.
Armed robberies in the 70s when there was no cameras, there was no guards, there was no glass on the counters, and there was no credit cards in 1970, 69, 70, 71. I was 25 years old robbing banks. And
how many did you?
Oh, half a dozen. We did them with a clock. You had a minute and 30 seconds to get in, jump over the counters, take the money, and run.
What did you guys think you were Jesse James or what?
Oh, better. Yeah. But I got busted for one, and I wound up going to jail for 8 years. And at that time, I met this attorney. Thank God Jimmy Burke knew who he was. He said, hey, get this guy. He's going to be a famous attorney. Let him, file an appeal for you because you were released out of the Marine Corps for being totally nuts. And his name was Jerry Shargell.
Oh, Jerry today is he walks on water. This guy is like a $2,000 an hour guy.
Yeah,
literally.
When did he represented me, and I got out. I only did 13 months. Yeah.
Damn good lawyer, man.
Yeah, very, very famous. So he was actually one of Gotti's lawyers,
Yeah.
So, that's how I worked the system, got out. But when I was in there, Patrick, I met a guy who I thought was fascinating. And his name was Louis Fat Gigi Inglis. And he said, Ubats, you're in here for bank robbery. I'm doing 56 years for drugs. I go, yeah, so what? He said, if you buy a strainer and a spoon, you can make more money in one day mixing heroin than you could rob 10 banks.
So this gets you to think.
Yep.
It got me to think, yeah. And he was a funny guy. He was a very funny guy. So I got out and became a drug dealer.
How long were you doing that?
Oh, from 75 all the way up till 84, about 9 years.
What kind of weight?
I was dealing heroin mostly, small, ounce, 2 ounce, 3 ounce. I never got up into the heavy distribution part, but I made a lot of money because I had a half a dozen, just low end drug dealers that I probably make 20, 30,000 a week quietly.
Did you ever get caught doing that?
No, I never got caught doing it. No.
So that bank robbery bit was your only one?
That was the only bust that I had for years and years. Yeah, one time.
And then lucky.
What's that?
And then they threw out my case. I won an appeal on that case.
So you didn't do the 8 years?
Yeah.
How many years did you?
13 months I did. That was it.
Yeah.
13 months.
So that was your only...
Yeah, that was a good time, Patrick. I was in there, the Goodfellas scene in the movie, Paulie cutting the garlic. I was in that room. Right. I was in that room with Angelo, Paulie, Henry, Joe Armone. I was up there and they had all their crews there. And we didn't have telephones, but we had a corrupt priest. And my wife had to send $50 money order every month. I got whatever I wanted there.
A corrupt priest. Hard to believe, huh?
Father John, you sent him money orders to a post office box. He went back and told Johnny Dio, give the kid whatever he wants. He's sending money. And that's how I got my food, my cigars. Yeah.
So I guess the screws don't search a priest, I would imagine.
No. They had John and Jimmy Burke had 2 corrupt guards too.
So what we saw in that scene you're talking about in Goodfellas, was that accurate?
Absolutely accurate, 100% accurate. And there was a door that you go into this room. It was like the size of a big hotel room, 4 beds. And there was a knock. Like if you knocked 3 times, they knew who you were. If you knocked once or twice, they were careful. Who is this coming in? And Paulie Vario had Henry Hill working in the butcher shop. He would cut all the good cuts of meat and bring everything upstairs to Paulie.
So the hard time wasn't that hard?
I'm sorry?
The hard time wasn't that hard.
Oh, no, it was a joke. We had no phones, but Johnny Dio had a grip on the priest. And if you wanted a phone call, you saw Johnny, and Johnny would send you down to the priest's office.
Just like that.
Okay, yep. We're going to take a break here. We got to sell some stuff. So let's go to a commercial. This is Patrick Piccarelli, co-host of the Hollywood Godfather podcast. I'm also the president of Condo Security and Investigations, a full-time investigative and security firm established in 1988. We are located in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, with worldwide affiliates. Our business paradigm is simple: to provide the most professional services possible while maintaining an ethical standard and client satisfaction. Our areas of expertise include criminal and civil investigations, asset searches, surveillance, executive protection, question documents, background investigations, computer forensics, polygraph, and many other services. Our staff consists of former law enforcement professionals with hundreds of years of combined experience. Your initial consultation is free. Visit our website, www.condorprivateeye.com, or call 724-396-2808. Thank you. All right, we're back with Sal Pelosi.
Sal Polisi.
Police, pardon me. Polisi. I'm thinking of the politician. Polisi.
Yeah.
Hey, Sal, fascinating stories, man.
Yeah, good stuff.
What made you do a 180?
Okay, here's the deal. I was in prison with a guy who I loved. He was a sharp guy. He wasn't a drug dealer. He was an old-time mob guy. His name was Dave Icavetti. And once we got transferred, I don't know if you remember the old West Street MCC.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so they closed it in July of 74. They moved all of us to Park Row. I was the first, me and Jimmy Burke and Dave, we were the first ones in that new Park Row MCC. Well, Dave Icavetti and I would play pinochle against Jimmy Burke and Tommy DeSimone. So that was the summer of 75. But in December of 74, he had killed my best friend, Foxy Girodi.
Who killed him?
Tommy shot him.
That doesn't surprise me.
Yeah, he was a sick person, Tommy.
Yeah, for what real or imagined slight did this guy lose his life?
Yeah, he was defending his sister. He didn't want his sister going with Tommy. And they got into an argument. But what happened in that MCC was Dave Icavetti, I confided in him. He was the Gambino captain. He said, don't kill that sucker. He's going to get killed anyway. He's just remember this. Once you pull the trigger one time, you can't take it back. And as I'm telling you, get out, start something legit, and get away from these guys. All these new drug dealers, which were guys who were 25, 30, 35, they could buy and sell all the old capos because we made a lot of money with drugs. He says, it's a vicious business. It's going to take the whole mob down. That's what he told me in 75.
True words were never spoken.
I'm telling you.
How did Tommy DeSimone get killed?
Okay, so I got out in September 75. Tommy, Henry, and Jimmy were getting ready to get out to the halfway house in, like, say, September of 78. Tommy came to my car shop. I had a car shop that was legit. Then I had two buildings that I was chopping cars up, dismantling cars, stolen cars. I was selling to Roy DeMeo and John Caniglia. Tommy came to me. He goes, Ubas, we got this big score. I played it cool because I let him go with the murder and all. I said, nah, that's not what I'm doing anymore. There's no more guns in my life, no murder, none of that shit. I'm dealing drugs. That's it, Tommy. He went ahead and they did the Lufthansa score. He came and told me about a month before they did it. I don't want any part of it. Didn't want any part of it.
So they did ask you to be a part of it.
Tommy did, yeah. Yeah, we robbed a couple banks together, me and Tommy. We hijacked a half a dozen truckloads, Tommy and I.
Wow.
He was a good thief. He was a very good thief. He had the balls of a lion. He did.
Well, Sal, that was probably the best decision you ever made. Otherwise, you and I wouldn't be talking now.
Probably. And that was 78. Well, they did the heist, I think, December of 78. By January, February, the word was out that Tommy was gone.
Why?
Well, I don't really know. I didn't ever get, like a formal explanation who whacked him. There was rumors that John whacked him, Gotti whacked him. I don't know. I really don't know. And I just walked away. That's when I started to get away from all the guys because they were killing left and right. And another thing that happened to me was Cataldo was a big drug dealer. And one day he said to me, It was the summer of 78. Hey, you got to dig a hole first. I go, what do you mean a hole? We're going to whack this guy. And then, you whack this guy with us, you can get paid. So what do you want? He said, go out to West Hampton Beach. You're out there all the time. Dig a hole. Come back and wait for my call. You'll come pick up the guy. We'll throw him in the trunk of your car. You'll go bury him. Okay. I go out and I spend all night digging a hole, getting blisters on my hands. Okay.
Shame on them, man.
I go back to my house and I'm waiting. He never calls me. The next day I call him, Dominic. I was waiting all night long, man. So, come, let's have coffee. I go to have coffee. I go, what happened? He says, the guy didn't show up. He was supposed to bring himself to us, to me and Tootie Franzese, by the way.
Yeah.
I said, okay. He said, go back and fill the hole up.
Oh my God,
I
really?
had to go back and fill that hole up. Now, this was like, say, the summer, like July, August of 78. While I was coaching football, because I had two Gotti kids on my football team, Mark Ryder was on my football team, my son, bunch of wise guys' kids were on my football team. I'm coaching football one day, and Dominic Cataldo comes over. Come here, I want to tell you something. You remember that guy we were going to whack out? I go, yeah. He never told me his name. We got him last night. He wanted to brag about it. So where'd you get him? He delivered himself to Tootie's house. I was hiding in the closet. I came out with a wire. I strangled him. I go, so did you have a hole for him? He's, no, we just threw him in the street.
Jeez.
The question,
Patrick,
the question that I asked, I was supposed to never ask. Why?
Yeah, right, exactly.
And you know what he told? He told me something that shocked me. He said, yeah, it was better than paying him $250,000 I owed him.
Yeah.
Honor among thieves, huh?
I said, that's all? You killed him because you owed him money? He said, yeah. So that's when I knew everything was changing.
Yeah.
So you made an informed decision to get out, or it's just sort of happened gradually?
To get out. I wanted out by 79, 80. I remember the spring of 80 when Frankie Gotti, who was on my football team, got killed with the mini bike, right?
Yeah, Don Block. Yeah, right.
Right. So then my son was 12 already. By 1981, I went upstate New York and I bought a piece of property. I had about $1 million in diamonds and cash. I left Queens, went up there, and I built a racetrack. I spent over $1 million building a racetrack. The problem I had was I didn't realize you can leave the life of a gangster, but you got to stop spending like a gangster.
Yeah, right.
I didn't have any money coming in.
It goes away, man.
I was property poor. So a couple of years later, I borrowed $25,000 from Johnny Caniglia. I went back in the cocaine business.
Yeah.
And that's when I got busted and everything changed.
Mm-hmm.
How long we went for that?
How long was I dealing drugs?
Yeah, dealing drugs. And how long did you spend in prison?
I never went to prison.
That's
I mean, I was there about 10 weeks. I had $1 million bail. And when I got out, because of the judge, if you remember the judge in the Sinatra Club, the story, I fixed that case, my own drug case for the FBI.
Oh, okay. So
only 10 weeks.
Story. Yeah.
So you
walked. All
walked.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah, he walked. Just
so
like
by that time, by 84, 85, everything was changing.
Okay, so at 84 or 85, are you out now? Did you finally say that's
85? I go in the program and I watch what's going on. And now you're law enforcement. You know, all of a sudden, the feds have got high-tech surveillance, man.
Of course, yeah.
They got wiretaps. They're doing stuff nobody ever dreamed of.
Yeah. And you also got a RICO.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I was, I didn't plan. Listen, I didn't plan to testify against Gotti. I testified against Brennan the year before. The judge, Diane Jackalone, that crazy, naive prosecutor, calls me up, flies me to Detroit, Michigan, says, you know what? We got a Gotti case, and you're going to be the first witness in the first Gotti case. I go, are you kidding me? A RICO case. I go, he'll fix the jury. She said, you're watching too many movies, Sal.
And he fixed the jury.
With Sammy.
Yeah. If I recall, it was a $60,000 payment to the juror,
Exactly.
and the idiot put money in it.
Yeah. And so he became a folk hero right away.
Yeah. Teflon Don.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so Sal, once you're out, what do you do with yourself? I mean,
Well,
you're not making
what?
money anymore.
I got to tell you this. I was always a creative guy. Okay. And nobody really knows this. Eventually, I'm going to let it out. I never once committed a crime when they put me in Texas. I had a new name, 2 sons that were athletes, and I was blessed to meet people to make some money. I got into the silk screen business for a year or 2 or 3. I made some money. I still had a little bag of Kruger ends. Then about 5 or 6 years later, I already split with the first wife. I met this young gal. I go, I want to have a daughter. Okay. In the meantime, I thought I was getting married to her. We went to Vegas. I couldn't have married her because I was still married to the first woman.
Yeah,
that don't work.
Yeah, it doesn't work.
Anyway, to tell you the truth, Patrick, I invented a toy in 1997. Legitimately, I made $500,000 to $1 million in 90 days.
What
That's
kind
insane.
of?
It's still on eBay. I'm not going to tell you, but it's there.
Okay, see, now to make that kind of money, it'd have to be a sex toy.
Yeah, no, it was legitimate kids' toy.
Yeah. Wow.
I
The
did a
kid's
lot
toy.
of things like that. I really
Let me
did.
tell you something, Sal. We've been doing this for 5 years. We've had this podcast. I am so sorry that Gianni couldn't make it tonight because he would have loved this. But you, without a doubt, and I'm not blowing smoke, you're the most fascinating guest we've ever had. I'm serious.
That's true. That's true, Sal.
Yeah.
You got it.
Well,
So many
I didn't
stories.
want to do a podcast with Adrian, but he was so, persistent. Let me hear one of your stories because you read 2 books. It was 2 books.
Mhm.
But I tell you what I would like to do with Johnny, because I know it would fit. I would like to talk about what it was like 72 when that movie hit.
I tell you, yeah, we'd like to have you back. And I don't know, this was, I don't know what the hell happened today, but like I said, the first time in 5 years, 250 shows that this has ever happened. So
Wow.
I'll arrange that after we're off the air. You give me your contact information, and we will definitely do it because whatever information you can give about the Godfather is coming from another source. It's going to be a great show.
Yeah.
But that said, how did you 2 guys get together, you and Adrian?
Well,
I did a show for a guy named Gary
Jenkins.
He was a cop in Kansas City. I don't know how he got my name. I did a show for him, and the thing went viral. It was blown up. And then Gary told Adrian, you should interview this guy. Well, last year, Netflix paid me and my wife to go to New York. I spent a week there. They paid me a bunch of money. And I did this interview for them. It's not been seen yet. It's coming out. It's called Netflix Fear City 2.
Yeah.
Okay, I saw Fear City 1. It was good. It was last year.
Yep. The documentary.
This is the new one. This is the brand
Season
new
2, probably.
Yeah. 2 or 3.
When's
Yeah.
that coming out?
I'm sorry.
September,
that
right,
come-
Sal?
I think they're going to air it September.
September, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, the first Fear City was great.
Oh, yeah,
They-
it was.
Real good job on it. So, okay, you guys have a project together. Adrian.
Yeah. Okay. Well, yeah. So me and Sal, we decided to partner up after I did an interview with him, and it was one of my top most viewed interviews as well, just because Sal's got a crazy amount of stories and shit, man. And people realize that, he's not really did a lot of podcast appearances or interviews recently in today's times. We see all these other people, all the other mafia guys out doing shows, but we don't really see Sal. And so I was like, man, I really want to do something with him, because if I'm going to stay in, doing mafia and true crime, I want to have a co-host. And so I was like, I think Sal would be someone that would really coincide with what I'm trying to do. And so that we made it happen. So we started a Patreon channel, which is another podcast platform where you can see all of our videos that are on there. We're going to launch our first one on the 19th of this month, so June 19th. And then the second episode will be on the 26th of June. And then July 3rd will be our 3rd episode. And then July 10th will be our 4th episode. So, I mean, what we're doing is we're going to put it partially on my YouTube channel. some of the episodes, or each episode, there'll be partial amounts of it on YouTube. And if anybody wants to check it out, I mean, I encourage you to check it out, because Patrick got some in the show notes. I think it is. Is that where people can find it? Our links?
Yeah, and well, also we can tell them it's a lifetime of mafia tales.
Yep, that's what I was going to say. Yeah, the podcast itself is called Lifetime of Mafia Tales with Salvatore Polisi and then myself, Adrian Martinez. And it's on the Patreon app, and it's also on our YouTube channel. Well, my YouTube channel, I got 2 podcasts on there now, is the Invest in Yourself podcast, and then In a Lifetime of Mafia Tales. It's all on one platform on YouTube, but that's where you could find all of our videos and all of other Sal stories. I mean, we intend on having guests as well come on, so hopefully we can return the favor once we start building up our audience and have you and John come on, you know.
Love to have you. And guys, you know, thank you very much. And Sal, you're a hell of a storyteller. You're what's known as a natural.
Mafia racketeur, right, Sal?
People can't write scripts like this. All right,
that's true.
I mean,
yeah.
Okay, we're going to go off the air.
Okay,
Thanks, Patrick.
Okay, thanks, Sal.
Right.
Adrian, I'll be in touch, man.
All right. See you guys. Bye.
And that was that. But I'll be back.
Thank you for tuning
No
in
regrets,
to the
no
Hollywood
complaints.
Godfather podcast.
Live the
You
life
can
with no
contact Gianni
restraints.
Russo or Patrick
The little
Picciarelli
kid
with
they
your
all
questions
counted
and
out.
comments through the
Prove them
contact
all
section
wrong,
of our
that's without
website,
a doubt. Laying there with my left side
HollywoodGodfatherPodcast.com,
numb.
which is where you can also subscribe to our weekly newsletter. You can also call and leave us a message at 646-776-3038. Remember to follow us on Instagram at Hollywood Godfather and on Facebook, as well as leave us a review on Apple Podcasts. We'd like to know what you like about what we're doing, what you'd like to hear in the future, and anything else you might suggest to improve our podcast. Most importantly, hit the subscribe button. We'll be back next week with stories of the mob in Hollywood, as well as answers to your mysteries.
My kids still can't believe I sat with a saint. My life's like scenes out of a movie. I'm the Hollywood Godfather, truly. I got stories with them all. You know, celebrities, world leaders, icons. Who knows what's next for me? I'll never get too old to have a little fun. Come on, I'm Gianni Russo, a genuine one of a kind. What a ride it's been, this life of mine. And I ain't done yet. I'll be back. Until next time.
And that was that.
When I was 17, it was a very good year. It was a very good year for small town girls and soft summer nights. We'd hide from the lights on the village green. When I was 17,